Hi everyone, my name is Danny, and in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about my depersonalization and derealization story and how I recovered from it. For most of my life, I didn't thought about this type of problems, especially when I was young. Even it was a little bit of a taboo. I'm from Spain, and we don't have really a good culture about mental health. And most of the times, talking about any problems related to any type of mental illness was something that even was scary for most of my family members. My grandpa died out of Alzheimer's, which it was like a bit of a hit to my family. And my grandma had a little bit of psychotic episodes. She used to say hi to people who didn't exist out of her window, and most of the things that they used to talk about, we have to be careful because they might be not true. So coming from that background, my parents, especially my mother, she never tried to really talk about any of this, and she was a bit of in a negation state because she didn't want to deal with this. Until I was 16, and with some friends, I was studying abroad, and I came back with with my childhood friends. We were talking about the stuff, and they suddenly put out a bit of weed, and they were smoking a joint, and they told me that they started smoking and if I wanted to try. And I knew at some point that was going to be something that I wanted to try, at least to see how it felt, and everyone was talking about all these experiences that they were having while smoking. So it was the time, the moment, and I decided to give it a go. So at 16 years old, I smoked my first joint. And instantly, after I smoked it, I suddenly got like completely frozen, and I felt that I was out of my mind. I felt the effects, like, I don't know if it was the effects of maybe being really scared, or I don't know if it was the effects of the marijuana itself, but I started to feel really, really panicked and a lot of self-conscious about my body and everything that was going on. And the feeling didn't stop, and it just kept going and kept going, kept going. I felt really like this kind of feeling that everyone was against me, and also I felt like really everything like really detailed. Reality was really detailed, and it was too much for me. And while my friends, they were just sitting down at the sofa and they were watching some funny movies while they were high, I was just praying for it to finish. Thankfully, a couple of hours later, the effects went down. Then I went back to my house, and at home in my room, the effects started to calm down. I fall asleep out of basically I was restless, so I just pretty much broke down in my bed and slept for as many hours as I could. And thankfully, the next day when I woke up, I felt a little bit dizzy, but I just didn't remember much. So I kept with my life and I just completely forgot about what had happened. This was my first experience with depersonalization and derealization. But when it all started, it was when I was 19. I was studying abroad still, and I decided to experiment with a bit more of drugs, and this time was with LSD, which for people who doesn't know is a type of psychedelic who broadens your experience. It makes you feel much more like connected to everything. You see everything like with much more detail. It's like tuning up the level of your brain. And I decided to take it. I took way too much that I should have, and the people who gave it to me, they might not really thought about what effects it could cause on me and stuff like that. And even though I was prepared and I was taking all the cautions that I should have taken, even though it was an illegal drug and it's not a drug that I should recommend to anyone, I experienced a lot of panic, a lot of stress. I couldn't grasp reality. That was my main problem. I felt that I was going to lose my mind, that I was going crazy, that I was going to be able to express or be back to reality. I was going to be crazy forever. And that feeling really stayed with me. After the effects of LSD went down and I got back to reality, I looked myself in the mirror and I couldn't recognize myself anymore. It was a weird feeling because I knew who I was. I saw my face. I even saw it even more clear than before because I saw it as a third person, but I couldn't recognize it as me. At the beginning, I thought I was like completely, maybe I was enlightened, or I was like, I transcended reality. But after the days came back and I came back a bit more to the reality that I was experiencing, I started to be more aware of the reality, that it wasn't an enlightened reality or whatever. Because if it was enlightened, it wasn't as described. I felt a lot of anxiety, I felt a lot of distress, I felt completely disconnected from everything, and I felt like I was having like a wall or some kind of a fog wall between me and reality. And also I was observing myself constantly as a third person. I couldn't see connected to me. I saw like this kind of third eye view of everything, and I couldn't be emotionally connected to anything. So I started to research. I started to look up for things, what was going on, what was happening. And this is when the first time I heard about the topic of depersonalization and derealization. At the beginning, I thought it was maybe something that it was going to last for a couple weeks or even a couple months, but I would be okay. And I took it as a learning experience. It was like something that was going to make me strong, and it was going to make me like not being able to go through this again. But after I started to learn from it and I started to see a little bit from it, I started to realize that it was going to take longer, and I started to get really, really, really angry against myself. And it was something bad because I couldn't change this. And it was a bit of a feeling of helplessness. I couldn't find anything who was going to help me. I couldn't talk to anyone about this, or if I talked to someone, they couldn't really relate to it, and they told me that I should just look away or keep going with my life or forget about it, that everything will come back to normal. But no matter how much I put effort, how much I tried to look out, to look to something else, I couldn't connect back to myself as it was before. So this is why, in search of answers, I look every type of research and any type of topic I could find related to this. And I ended up finding some resources on YouTube that they were creating and they were talking about this idea. And especially there were a couple of videos and channels. One of them, it was by Sam Harris, if I remember. And he was talking about, in a really detailed and explained manner, how depersonalization and derealization worked. And he was selling a course, so I decided to buy it. The course, it was a little bit overpriced. It was over $100. And at that time, I was a student. I didn't have much money, but I decided to invest it in his course. And while the course, it wasn't the best that I saw, and it has a lot of information and technical information that I didn't need, something that really clicked with me and it made it worth it for me was that he said that the root cause of depersonalization and derealization, it was your family and your own past and upbringing. At the beginning, I didn't believe it. I was like, no, depersonalization, it was only because I took LSD, and it's because of LSD I have to overcome this trauma. I start to learn about trauma and techniques on how to overcome the traumas that I was having. But when I was diving deeper and looking more of all these topics, I started to realize that my upbringing, my family, the way that I was connected, it was much more a point and and a weight over my illness or whatever I was having, my condition, that any other experience. I started to realize that my experience, it was only influenced by the beliefs and the upbringing that I had before. And that idea that I had when I was on LSD and also when I smoked weed for the first time of losing control, thinking that I was going to lose my mind, and that anxiety and panic that traumatized me and started my depersonalization and derealization, it was really more of like the perfect storm, and it was something that it was due to happen by whatever thing that it happened. So more than the LSD and my thinking that maybe LSD broke my neurons or whatever did in my brain, I started to realize that all my belief system, all that I was going up bringing, all the problems that I had in my family, and some personality disorders that I started to discover in my mother especially, and all the toxic family traits that I had with, they were responsible for my depersonalization and derealization much more than what I thought before. After this, even though it wasn't easy and I had to take, like, it was a hard work and I had to work with different psychologists and different therapy methods, I learned how to use EFT, which is a technical emotional freedom technique. I did a lot of journaling, a lot of traveling, a lot of talking with different people, different cultures, different experiences. And also I use the internet as a helping point. I create my own channel, which it was in Spanish, and I talk about my problems and my stories, and I share it with the world. But after a couple years, 3-4 years, I was able to finally heal, even though I think healing is a process, an ongoing process, and we always have to heal. And the world is constantly, we live in a traumatized world, we live in a traumatized society. So I think healing is an ongoing process, and probably it will be for the end, at the end of our lives. I was able to get up to a point where I felt back to myself. I felt back connected to who I was. I felt back connected to my reality. I felt back connected to my life, and I was able to feel back again my life. So even though I'm still healing and I'm still doing much work still about all the stuff that has been going on in my life and understanding better myself, up to this point I can say that I'm finally back to myself, I am recovered, and I've been like that for the last year. And even though depersonalization and derealization is something that I still deal with at some points in my life, maybe because there is an stressful event or whatever, or maybe something goes on, now I see it much more as a tool than as an enemy or as something that I have to get away from. It's something that I learned from depersonalization and derealization, is that it's something that your brain is putting on yourself to protect you, to heal you, to help you distance you from the experience so you can think a bit more clearly and not being flawed and completely overwhelmed by your emotions. But if I have to share a lesson after all these experiences and all these years, it's been a long journey, more than 7 years trying to find everything and all the resources available, I can say that you are not alone. That is something much more common than most people think, and most people, they don't even they don't have the courage to talk about it because they think people are gonna judge them and people are gonna try to point on them. But I have to say that with time, effort, and patience, it's something that you can recover, and it's something that you can get much better. Whatever your route you choose to take, you will end up getting better at some point. So I hope you enjoy my story, and if it's something that you want to work on and you want to dive deeper, I put together a course about depersonalization and derealization, which is called the Depersonalization and Derealization Blueprint, which you can find out in the description. And if you come from this video, you have a special discount, which you can take advantage of. And in the course, we will dive deeper about different techniques, different experiences, and I put together all my experience in depersonalization and derealization into this course. So without further ado, I wish you the best in your recovery journey, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.